Actually, there is a class going on for the test series students, right? And somehow the foundation started and some classes got clashed. I just tried to finish it by 4:30, but somehow it didn't happen. Okay? And because of what they are going to write the mains this year, and there's a good number of people. They had lots of queries and all, right? Because of what? Anyways, okay. Can we begin it? कुछ पूछना है? हाँ बताइए. उसके नाम पे आप ही पूछ लीजिए. चलिए. देख, look, you people have already selected history optional, right? Still, this is the stage where you can think of, right? Because you have just now, begin with the preparation. I think some out of you must be very sure about your optional paper, right? Whether I think few, that number is very less. It's not about number. Let me tell you, look, what is the confusion that you are having in this optional paper? If you have any such kind of doubts, questions, queries, you can ask to me. Very simply. Because look, this is the time. Still, if you need, or if you are thinking of, changing your optional paper, I think this is the right time. After 1 month, you won't be able to change it. It is not because of that you have joined the classes. That's not a problem at all. Okay? The problem is what? Once you have studied a paper, so many people I have seen that, at a later stage, they kept on struggling, right? Should I continue with the same paper or not, right? And sometimes they are not finding the answer. And in fact, many people have done it successfully also. They have changed the optional, they become successful, right? But it is not an easy job, because once you are changing your optional, it means that you are lacking for 5 months, okay? At least 5 or 6 months, right? So that, that's the problem because of what is happening. You have to be very sure about the optional paper. Look, I'll just say you a single word. Is there any problem? Okay. I'll just say you one thing, that as far as this optional paper is there, so in fact I have discussed it many times that there are some positive sides, some negative sides, and in fact every optional paper always has a positive and negative sides, right? So the same is true with this optional paper. But mostly the thing which normally creates panic among the students, that is regarding the vastness of the syllabus. Right. So far whatever we have done, right, at least one thing that you might have understood, right, that it is not about facts, right, it is all about analysis of the subject, it is about understanding. And in fact, definitely we need to remember certain amount of facts, but I hope you can understand to what extent we need to know the facts, right. So basically we need to analyze the changes which are taking place in society, and in fact, even though if you find that the question is very much factual, and if you are trying to answer the question factually, right, you'll get the answer in that ratio only, right? Whether you, if you are, incorporating certain analytical part in your answer, that is going to add some extra marks in your answer, right? So history is all about understanding. History is all about understanding the change which is coming over the time into the society. And as I have discussed Hegel and Karl Marx yesterday, and as I told you that these were the two fellows who somehow made us understand about the real nature of the subject, right? Without talking about the change, we can't talk about the history, right? So ultimately, and in fact, as you can think of yourself only, right, that what is the point of reading history? Very simply, we need to understand the society, and just by understanding that, somehow we can imply those ideas into present and of course in the future, that we cannot repeat the same mistakes again and again, and we can learn certain lessons from the past, right? That's the simple funda that we do have, right? So now, as far as the marks are concerned, right, so definitely it might be possible that if you are appearing in the UPSC with the maths optional exam, suppose maths, right, you are appearing in the UPSC with this maths optional, so it's very much possible that you are scoring somewhere around 360. And people have scored 360, right? But have you seen everything is having positive and negative sides, right? But have you ever thought what is the syllabus of this maths optional? It takes around 12 months or 1 year to finish the syllabus, right? Now what is happening? Have you ever so far seen any candidate with mathematics optional top in the examination. And I hope you can understand one thing: if somebody is taking maths as as an optional, so definitely if somebody is scoring around 360, and in fact I think in the last means examination somebody has scored 375 also in the mathematics optional. So I think it's such a gap is there in other humanities paper and mathematics, then definitely he should have topped in the examination. So why it's not happening? Because of this period. Yes, if you're working very hard, you can get success with this mathematics optional, because that optional is going to help you out, right? But it doesn't mean that just by taking this optional you can always success, because at the same time there are certain drawbacks of the subject also. Like what is true with the humanities paper, that definitely these paper are definitely not going to get you this much marks, but 300 is an achievable target. And in fact, I must tell you one thing: we people are just trying to learn the history just to achieve this. Very frankly, I am telling you, right? Now it depends up to your skill, your potential. Somehow you can take it to 325. A person, I just discuss about Ishwar Kundu. Last year he scored 219, and this year he scored 316, right? 316. So a person who has studied engineering, a person who is definitely involved in job, and even though that person can score 316, so I hope you can understand the situation. Right. So if somebody who is an engineer, right, he is serving somewhere, and even though he can score 316, so why can't you expect of scoring 300 and 300? So it's practically possible, and I think there should not be any doubt in that. So this is the target. If I am teaching this subject, so the normal target which is there in my mind, everybody from this class who is writing the means examination, right, must score somewhere around 300. Right, but if you are scoring somewhere around 280 to 300, so I think you are capable of clearing the means examination, because with this score somebody can top in the examination. Like we have do have example of rank 35. We do have example of rank 40. Right, these all scored somewhere around that, and they actually got very good rank in the. And if somebody is preparing you for the UPSC examination just to get the rank 1. So I think in that case you have choose the wrong option. Right? Who is trying to get the rank 1 in the class? Look, ultimately we need a good rank just to get an IS. Bina kisi doubt ke. That should be the objective. And I think if you are scoring 300, so around 300, so I think very easily you can get that target. So always focus on the target. So if it is about marks that you are much worried, so I am just very frankly telling you, this is the possible target. And now whatever I am just passing you in the class, if you are utilizing that as it is, in that case definitely you can around score somewhere around 320, 325. But do you think that it is only about the information? No, some other things are also there. The way you are managing the stuff, right? The first thing. The second thing, the way you are presenting your answer or content, that's the second thing. The third thing, the way you are managing your time. Right. So there were so many other things which also matter, and that is where you can't say it is only about that subject. Every subject is getting a mark, and in fact no year you have seen that nobody has cleared the UPSC with any particular optional paper. And in fact I must as I told you earlier also, that around 8% of the people are clearing this UPSC examination almost every year. That figure fluctuates, but I am just telling you 8 to 11%, right? This is the figure, right? From 8 to 11% people are clearing the UPSC with this optional paper, right? So it means definitely there is a good number of people, those who are clearing with this history optional. That's a very simple thing. And in fact there is another thing which is also very important, and in fact I told you many times that this is sometimes frustrating me also, right? That those people, those who have studied history in their graduations and the post graduation, if those people are not getting good marks, it is quite frustrating, right? So if the person, those who are not from non-history background and they are scoring around 300, because this time unfortunately those who have got good ranks, right, they all were from non-history backgrounds. That's quite frustrating for me also, because as you can understand, it's a sort of emotional sort of thing, right? Because I am part of this subject, and if the subject with what I am teaching, and in fact there is a very simple reason also for that, because the way we people are teaching history in university, that's altogether different. We never try to build up the concepts, right? Although I'm not supposed to do that, but I'm just telling you what we people are doing. Those who have done their graduation, they must be knowing from history, right? We simply the first day or the second day of the session, we just try to get the previous year question papers. Isn't that true? Right? I have been part of that system, and unfortunately I have to tell this, right? And once I started teaching in university, right? So I tried to follow this, right? That we must pass the concept to the students, but students themselves are not happy. They are not feeling very comfortable. Why? Because ultimately they have to score good in the graduation examination. I'm just teaching the undergraduate people, not the postgraduate people, right? So basically, what is happening? This is what happening in universities. So somehow, what they know actually, whatever the questions being asked in UP, in examination, they just prepare those questions, and of course, at the end of the day, right, they are just ready with 5 or 6 questions, and definitely they are performing very good in the examination, and because of that, they are scoring also very good. I hope you must be knowing that in PDU people are scoring around 8 CGPA, 7.5. Right? So somehow that particular concept is gone missing with those students, because once you have started learning history and you just learn the history topic wise, so definitely the changes, which is the crux of the subject, that is the thing that you people are missing. You need to try to analyze the society, right? What change is coming after that? What is the next change? If you are not having that approach, definitely you won't be able to do justice with the paper. That's the reason. That's the reason. So, somehow you just try to develop the concept, nothing else. And if the concept is there, right, definitely it will score good. And if I'm successful and as I'm getting some good results, from here, that's a very simple thing. I just try to develop the concepts in the students. That's the simple reason. That is why I'm just getting result. When I started teaching for the UPSC people, the only thing I knew that I know history, the first thing, and the second thing, sort of, I had an understanding of the subject, and I always thought that if people are doing this, they are going to, get good reward in the examination. And the third thing, yes, I scored good in history optional, so I knew that whatever I have applied while writing the paper, if somebody else is applying the same formula, definitely they can score good, and somehow people are scoring good. Right? These are the same people, they could not score even 200, and now they have started scoring around 280, 290 very frequently. I'm not saying there were so many people, those who have scored very good but could not clear the examination. So we cannot take the name of those people, but I think those those who are performing good, those who are following the instructions properly, those who are following the instructions properly, they are scoring good. Right? And every paper, I won't say ki history is the only subject through which you can clear the examination. Any subject that you are taking, you can clear the examination. But again, I'll repeat the same thing. And in fact, I just wanted to discuss this particular thing. I have just started the group, right? And so far, only I think 22 members are there. Still, this much number is missing. 30 more students, right? Specifically, the online students, right? I don't know why. What is the point of making the group? That at least I just wanted to be connected with the online student. Definitely you people are coming every day, so we can discuss it. But I think people are not serious. So the most important thing which is required to clear UPSC, that is the seriousness. And in fact, sometimes people are saying कि सर मुझे हिस्ट्री नहीं समझ में आती है या मुझे इकोनॉमिक्स नहीं समझ में आती है, ठीक है, लोग ऐसा बोलते हैं, तो छोड़ दीजिए UPSC पे. एक तो तरीका यही हो सकता है, just leave the idea, drop the idea of giving the UPSC. Or what is the second alternative? You can learn the paper that you don't know, right? And one thing that is also very sure, that the day you have decided that I have to do this, right, you'll learn it. One example or one short story, okay? Actually, I have done my 12th till 12th I was having science, right? And when I was in 10th, there was a question. There's a very normal question. There's a circle, one inner circle, one outer circle, right? And you have to find the area of this. ठीक है 6, 7, 8 की कुछ की बात होगी, ठीक है. My father was a teacher, ठीक है. And I could not do this question. I got 95 in history, mathematics, right? And I just because of this I lost 5 marks. ठीक है. I just told my father कि somehow this happened to me. I don't know why. Somehow मतलब मैं दिमाग अप्लाई ही नहीं कर पाया वहाँ पे कि इसमें बड़े वाले का निकाल के छोटे वाले का घटा दो, उससे जो है वो आ जाएगा. नहीं किया. My father, उस समय तक मुझे समझ में नहीं आया. ठीक है. My father was very sincere about the studies and all. और 5 मार्क्स के लिए 5 छड़ी पड़ी थी मुझे. ठीक है. उसके बाद आज तक ये फंडा नहीं बोला कि तो बहुत सिंपल क्वेश्चन है. ठीक है. So it is all about your your dedication. If you are dedicated, with every optional you can do. But yes, the optional in which you are feeling comfortable, that is going to help you. That definitely I'll say. If you are not feeling comfortable, right? No, history is not a good taste. I'm not having fun in this particular. Fun is not the perfect word actually. We are not here to just get the fun. Yes. So basically, what I'm trying to say, this is a weapon, right? And suppose if you are trapped in a battlefield, right? You don't have any weapon except the knife. Finally, what will you do? What will you do? You'll just use that knife only to fight. That's the simple thing, right? So any paper that in which you are feeling uncomfortable, it is not about that, right? Ultimately, you have to study the paper because you have to clear the UPSC. The day UPSC is getting a provision that you have to learn Chinese to clear UPSC, that day, on the same day, you'll start learning Chinese also, and you'll learn Chinese to clear the UPSC. Those who are dedicated. Those who are not dedicated, they'll say कि अरे यार ये क्या बेवकूफ़ी है, चाइनीज़ कौन सीखता है ये. अभी नहीं सीखेंगे, नौकरी के बाद जब कन्नड़, तमिल और तेलुगु सिखाएंगे तब तो सीखेंगे. कन्नड़ भी तो बहुत टफ है, तेलुगु भी बहुत टफ है, मलयालम बहुत टफ है. सीखना पड़ेगा. You have to learn the language, right? Otherwise you won't be able to serve in a better way. 2-3 महीने की एक ट्रेनिंग होती है लैंग्वेज की, and there you have to get yourself trained in that language, right? You have to apply that language, you have to use the language because you could not you cannot communicate with the rest of the people if you don't know the language. So at least a basic understanding of the language should be there, and you are learning that. तो जब आप नौकरी में आ जाते हैं तब नहीं बोलते हैं यार ये क्या है, नहीं करूंगा मैं, छोड़ दूंगा लैंग्वेज के लिए. आप यूपीएससी तो नहीं छोड़ते या जॉब तो नहीं छोड़ते. यहाँ पे अभी तो look, it is not about history, it is about all the papers, right? So if you find that if you find the paper interesting, you find that yes, this paper could be used by you, that's very fine. Grammatical errors, right? Look, I won't suggest you to go for this grammatical errors, right? Because this is not good for you, because when you are writing the means examination, so look, English is such a thing which you can learn in just 5 months or 6 months. That's it, right? So I think it is not about language, it is about the content. But yes, if you are not very perfect with the language, in that case you must do one thing: you start writing the shorter sentence, right? The simple sentence that you can frame properly. So it's all about that. It is not necessary that you have a very good language, and just by writing language, anybody cannot clear UPSC just by writing a good language. If it would be like that, then so many people, those who are coming from the rural backgrounds, and in fact this has become one of the reality of UPSC now, that most of the people, those who are coming from the rural background, they are clearing the UPSC. And I have lots of such examples, like again I'll give the example of Ishwar Kundu. He has just recorded a video, and somebody is writing below that comment that his English is better than Bill Gates' English. Who is stupid now, you decide. That fellow with that English only cleared UPSC with such a good rank, 187, right? Got the IS also, right? Now the cadres have been distributed, right? So now he got IS also. So what is the point of they are not looking for a person who is very good at language. That could help you. Definitely, I am accepting the point, right? But it doesn't mean that they are only preferring such kind of people. Why UPSC is coming with this option to you that you can give the interview in your Hindi, right? So UPSC is giving this option to you, because ultimately it was realized by UPSC, because when we used to write UPSC, any as a choice was not there, right? But now somehow it was realized by UPSC, there were some people coming, they are good, while they are writing English, but they are not that much good while speaking English. That is why they came up with this, option. And people are clearing. That Vaibhav Gaikwad, 551 rank, right? Whatever the students I am mentioning, I am just mentioning my own student, right? Vaibhav Gaikwad literally told me that he came from a rural background, right, and he has done his engineering also in local language, Marathi, right, and then he came here to join to Bajiram, right. I'm not criticizing Bajiram, I'm simply talking about the language, right. So he came here to join Bajiram, right. He joined Bajiram, and after 1 month he realized that he could not understand a single word which has been spoken in the class. He left everything. He got frustrated. If I cannot understand anything, how is it possible for me to clear the examination? He left everything, went Hamdard, Jamia Hamdard, right? And there he started, developing, he started developing the language and some other thing, and finally in the 4th attempt, he made it. Got IPS this time. Was from OBC category, got IPS. And just see the situation. I mean, I just went to Maharashtra, 29 and 30th, right? So I met Vaibhav actually. I just went there because of Vaibhav only, because Vaibhav is from Ahmednagar, which is much closer to Siredi. Okay. And I was planning to go Siredi. I'm not a very religious kind of person. My wife is. Okay. So she was forcing me for last 4 years that we have to go Siredi. But all the time I was just avoiding because of the rust which is there in. So finally Vaibhav cleared it, right? And then he said, "Ki sir, you come, and now I'll just finish this task." I went there and I just saw that every person has a different vision to see, because he's the first person from the area around his place or his village that cleared UPSC. The person who has cleared UPSC. So somehow it's all about dedication. Right? It's all about dedication. Any other thing? Do you have any other doubts, questions, query? You are yourself confused. Do you know about Vipassana? Vipassana. सभी सीख जाएंगे. विपस्सना के बारे में नहीं पता. इतना कंट्रोवर्सी हुआ है विपस्सना को लेके, तब भी नहीं पता आप लोगों को. Recently, I think 1 year back, Rahul Gandhi went somewhere, and there was much hue and cry because of that. No, he just went somewhere in Thailand or some such kind of countries, right? And there's a process, there's a system. I hope you must be knowing about Vipassana. No, you never heard. Newspaper. Okay, I think it's a very common system, and in fact, there's a center in Haryana. There is a very popular center in Bangalore. And the most important center of this particular practice is in Dharamsala. So something which is related to Buddhism, right? So basically they train you for 14 days. And it's a sort of training that you can overcome your fear, wrong things and some others, right? Because there for 14 days you are not speaking a single word with anybody. Right? You are just doing some, sitting in the yoga posture, and just you are thinking for something, right, which is there in your mind, and you can't talk to, anyone, a single word. You have a single room. So for at least 13 days, you are not speaking, and you don't have even diary, pen, mobile, anything. You could not even write anything on paper if you think of writing, right? So I think you must go for Vipassana. Somehow you can recollect your energy. And then you can start preparing. Just making fun. Joke, right? Nothing else. It's a bad joke. Nothing is impossible here. But one thing you people always remember, I have personally seen, right? And I'll just suggest you the same thing, right? Dedication is the most important thing. And smartly preparation. That's the 2 key of success for the UPSC. Otherwise, we'll keep on struggling. You won't be able to clear it. Dedication, very important, because sometimes it seems very frustrating, because somehow you are just getting unsocialized. And everybody has potential to clear it. But yes, I must tell you, very few number of people, those who can clear it, because most of the people are not dedicated. I know that. Most of the people, those who are preparing for UPSC, they are not much dedicated. So it is the dedication and your hard work which will get you through. Okay, so what was the topic that we have started discussing? Sources, right? And we did discuss something about this archaeological sources and all, right? So there were few things that we have already discussed regarding this sources, right? And basically we did discuss about the mounds, right? And we did discuss some of the things regarding this inscriptions, right? So basically mounds, I mean chances are very less that there would be a question directly from the mound, right? Just a second, just give me a second. Okay, so that day we have started discussing about, sorry. So that day we have started discussing about this, inscriptions, right? So let us begin the discussion with the inscriptions. But before, before I come to inscriptions, there are a few more things that we need to know or we need to understand. These are not very important, but for the sake of information, I am just telling you that if you think that, once we go for the archaeology, so there were so many branches of science which are helping us to understand the archaeology, right? And there we can, normally there were few systems that we do know that, such as about the radiocarbon dating, right? So I hope you do understand about the radiocarbon dating, in what way we try to decipher the age of, any particular thing. But apart from that, there were so many other things which are also helping us. And in fact, in archaeology, we'll find that many changes have, come so far. And in fact, we can, I must say, many advanced, concepts or the advanced branches of knowledge that have started helping us. And now people have started interpreting that, I mean to say archaeology with, with the help of some other branches of science, right? So there we can discuss about such as, a very important thing that must be discussed here, such as the paleontology, right? So what exactly is, happening in that? Right? So this is another branch of science, and in fact, such as you might have studied even in the NCERT also, such as pollen analysis and some other things, right? So basically, we are just trying to analyze the anything which is biological, right? Anything, we are just trying to, I mean to say. So we are just trying to study such kind of things, and by studying those kind of things, we just try to decipher that the nature of the flora and fauna during that particular period. And so these are some branches. And apart from that, apart from this paleontology, we can talk about the anthropology as well, right? So that is another branch which is very much helping us, right? And what is their anthropology? So basically, as per the some current societies, we are just trying to understand the development of the societies of the past, right? So in paleontology, we just try to analyze some biological sort of things like the floras and the faunas, and we try to fix the age, what kind of floras and faunas used to be in the historical period. So that is one of the things that we must discuss, right? But at the same time, if we'll move on, and we'll find that if it is about inscriptions, so normally what happened, that inscriptions have always been expected, always it has been always perceived that it is basically telling us about the material culture of the people, right? Because so many discussions we found in the inscriptions, and we just try to study the material culture which used to be there during this particular period, right? And because of that, what is happening, that sometimes we somehow could not relate it with the cultural thing, right? And that is why a new development which is coming while studying the inscriptions. So there we'll find that now people got they change their attitude, and in fact something which is known as neo-archaeology, right? Something which is known as neo-archaeology, and as per the neo-archaeology, now they have started started connecting the inscriptions basically with the cultural development, right? And in fact, they have started saying, such as now, I hope you must be knowing about one thing, that environmental history has become very popular, right? So in fact, now we have started trying to understand the history of environment, and most importantly, the relationship between human societies and environment, the way they are trying to cope up with the nature, right? The way they are trying to utilize the nature. So these kind of ideas were also coming into limelight, and because of what we can see, now this new archaeology is coming, and there was a new branch which is known as processualism, right? And because of that, we can say now they have started connecting the inscriptions with the culture, connecting the inscriptions, or basically the informations of the inscriptions inscriptions with the culture and cultural development, right? So these kind of some changes are also coming while studying the archaeology, and that is why we can say ki if we are discussing about basically I mean to say inscriptions, so there were some new technologies are also coming, so were new interpretations, because it was not about the new technologies, because these are the technologies, right? But while understanding the inscriptions, as I told you that now they got a sort of new approach to understand the inscriptions, right? Because now as per the new approach, I just told you that now it was not only related to the material culture, rather it also got related to the values of the societies, in what way they were trying to use the nature, or in what way it was putting any sort of impact over the culture. And just because of that, we can say now some change or some new approach could be seen in while studying the inscriptions, right? So these are some changes which are over the time coming into the study of the inscriptions. And as you do know that while we talk about inscriptions, there is another branch of science which is very important, that is known as epigraphy, right? What exactly is epigraphy? Is it the study of inscriptions? No. It is basically the study of script, right, which is known as epigraphy. So now in epigraphy, what is happening? We have started trying to analyze the languages that we find in the inscriptions, right? And somehow that also got a sort of value addition in the study of the inscriptions. And that is why the thing that we need to discuss here, that is what kind of development in the languages could be seen in the inscriptions, right? And that could help us to understand the history in a better way, right? So before I start, let me first discuss about the before I start discussing about the positive or the negative sides of the inscriptions for history writing. Let us first discuss about the languages that could be seen in the inscriptions, right? So once we talk about inscriptions, so it is simultaneously telling us about a history of languages also, right? So if we need to discuss this, that in what way the languages were getting developed throughout the history, so somehow inscriptions are also helping us to understand that. So the earliest inscriptions were basically in which language? Prakrit, right? But do you think that it is the earliest language what has been used? Earliest deciphered script, right, that we do know, but it does not mean that people were not using any sort of script before that. As we do know, during the IVC also there was a language, right, which was normally known as pictographic, right? So yes, this is the language which was used, and it is known as pictographic, right? And sometimes basically this is one sort of language where we try to carry or convey the idea with the help of some symbols, right, which is known as pictographic. There were some other names are also there, such as Bostophodon, right? So that was the another term that we use is Bostophodon, right? So what exactly is Bostophodon? So in Bostophodon, basically it's a sort of writing which goes from left to right, and then the next line is from right to left, right? So it is a sort of circular writing, that is why it is known as Bostophodon. So these are some of the terms which has been used. Somehow this is about style, and this is about basically the nature of the language. So this particular language could be seen, pictographic language, in IBC, and as we do know that somehow it has not been deciphered, and that's the basic problem, and because of what, somehow it is limiting our information for the IVC. That's a sort of problem for the history writing. That's a different thing. Then if we'll move ahead, then what is the next language that we'll find in EA? The next language which has been used for writing inscriptions? Pali. Okay, is that correct? I'm just simply talking about the languages which was which were used for inscription writing or for the inscriptions. The next language which was used was Kharoshthi, right? Which was Kharoshthi. Now, do you know anything about Kharoshthi? That's a different thing. Yes, Kharosthi, right to left. That's true, right? Ashoka has used this particular language for writing the inscriptions, basically in the Gandhar region, right? So I hope you must be knowing about one other language which was known as Aramaic, right? So basically people have tried to trace the birth of Kharosthi from Aramaic as it had certain similarities, right? As it had certain similarities. And I hope you remember the period for IVC. What was the period for IVC? Somewhere around 2000 BC. And what was the phase of this Kharosthi? 3rd century BC. Now somehow there is a big gap. Somehow there is a big gap between these two periods, and it is actually a big question to the historians. Do you think that it's possible once people have started writing, and in fact as you do know that we have tried to analyze the script of IVC on the basis of some Greek and languages which are basically used on the northwestern side, such as Kharosthi, Greek, Aramaic, but somehow there is no similarities between these two, right? Then we tried to interpret IVC language, the script which was used on in IVC with the Brahmi. Then we tried to compare it with the Tamil, some Dravidian languages, right? But somehow we don't find any similarity, and that is why so far we could not decipher or decipher the script of IVC. But even though as I told you that this is a big gap, right, and there should be a satisfactory answer why the people have why did they stop using any sort of language or a script, right? And I hope you do understand the difference between language and script. It is not necessary for the language to have a script. Clear? Right. And at the same time, you must say that a language could be written in various scripts, right? So that is why don't get confused on these kind of things. So somehow the IVC people were using language or not, we are not pretty sure, but definitely if they are writing something, so they must be having a language, right? If we'll talk about the Kharosthi, so basically the language which has been used by them is Indian languages basically. So it was quite similar to basically the Prakrit and some other languages were being used. So what Ashoka was doing, Ashoka was writing his inscriptions, right? Basically it was the language was Prakrit, right? But he was writing it in various scripts, right? Such as Kharosthi, some Aramaic, Greek, right? So these are the of course Brahmi, right? That's another script which was used by him, and the most popularly Brahmi was used by him. So but he started writing with Kharosthi. Later on, basically in Indian side, he started using this Brahmi. So somehow, as I told you, that there's a sort of question for the historians, and they haven't given any satisfactory answer for this period. But even though the historians have tried to analyze the available resources or the available sources, and on the basis of that, they accept that there must be a language used by people in between, right? But somehow we don't know about that because any source is not talking about that, right? But on the basis of so many things, on the basis of these languages, they have tried to give a conclusion that yes, there were some languages which were used by the people during this particular period, right? Or some script which was used by the people. It is so unfortunate that we don't have any as such example of such in So after Kharosthi, as you do know, that some other Kharosthi and Aramaic, basically in India you'll find the next is Brahmi, right? So we do find the Brahmi inscriptions. Initially only I just told you that we have been discussing the language of the inscriptions, right? So once you talk about the Vedic Sanskrit, right, the first thing that you must know that the Vedic Sanskrit was not recorded or written, right? The first thing, yes, we'll come to Sanskrit, but once it has been recorded in the inscriptions, right? So more or less we can say that these languages, specifically the Pali, Prakrit, Ardhamagadhi, those which were written in the Brahmi language, right, these were being used from the 6th century BCE to 5th century AD, right? So, but somehow if we will come to the inscriptions, in that case we will find instead of 6th century, we will find that the inscriptions have been written down somewhere from 4th century BCE onwards, right. So, after 4th century BCE onwards, we will find that the inscriptions have been written in Brahmi, whether some of the literatures were compiled in, some Buddhist literatures were compiled in this particular inscription in on some other stuff, right. But as far as the inscriptions are concerned, so this people have started writing, right. People have started using this Brahmi for inscription writing 4th century BC onwards, right. So, as you do know, after that there is a transformation that could be seen somewhere in the beginning of the 1st century BCE, right. As you do know about Rudradaman. So, Rudradaman was the first person who has written the inscriptions, right, in Sanskrit language. So, 1st century BCE is marking the beginning of Sanskrit, and that was basically from 1st century BC, right. So, that is the history of Sanskrit. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of the Sanskrit, right? And people have started using Sanskrit from the first BC, right? And here onwards, you'll find that the Sanskrit is somehow trying to replace Brahmi, right? Because the tradition which was started by Rudradaman, it was later on followed by some other people also, and in fact after the Gupta period, as we do know, that then we find the frequent use of Sanskrit as a language, right, and then you will find that the most of the inscriptions were written in Sanskrit. But at the same time, you must remember why I have written here 5th century AD, because till 5th century AD you will find a tradition that people kept on writing their inscriptions in both the languages, right. In fact, they have they continued with Brahmi, and on the other side they they have written it in Sanskrit, right. So, somehow this tradition continued, but in between there were some more changes which are very important, that must be discussed here. That okay, fine, we did discuss something which was basically there in the North India, but certain changes that could be noticed even in the South India. So, basically in South India, again you will find that in South India during this particular period only, right, we will find the inscriptions in Sanskrit, in Tamil and Brahmi, and that tradition continued till 7th century AD. Till 7th century AD, people kept on writing the inscriptions in Tamil and Brahmi, and in fact there were 3 phases of Tamil and Brahmi, right. I am not going into that much detail, because which is ultimately not required for us to write in the mains examination, right. That somewhere we don't need that, but somehow you remember that yes, people were using Brahmi even in South India, right. And 7th century onwards, some now new changes are started coming, right. And in fact the language in the inscriptions got changed, and basically you will find some other languages which are coming in South India, such as Telugu, right. So, these two 7th century AD onwards, right. And finally we find Malayalam, that was from 15th century AD onwards. Right. Whether this tradition continued, the tradition of Sanskrit continued even after 5th century AD, and in fact we find that more inscriptions were written in Sanskrit after 5th century. As I told you that Guptas have they were actually the patronizers of they started patronizing Sanskrit, and that is why we'll find that this particular tradition has got a boom, and people kept on writing the inscriptions in the Sanskrit. So that's a brief history about the inscriptions, and basically about the languages which were used in the inscriptions, right. So somehow, as you can understand, the inscriptions are definitely the most valuable source for us to write the history, or for the historian to write the history, and that is why we need to analyze the use of inscriptions for history writing, right. So there were various kind of use that could be discussed for inscriptions for history writing, right. So what kind of things that we can discuss in what kind of, let us discuss. You just give a heading, use of inscriptions in history writing. Use of inscriptions in history writing. You write a subheading below that. Various types of inscriptions. Now, various kind of categorization could be done for the inscriptions, right? And these categorization could be based on you are trying to do some basic generalization, basic categorization of inscriptions, some broad categorization of history. On what basis we can broadly categorize the inscriptions? Sorry, location. Okay, fine. Material? No. Inscription is always important for the information, right? That is why it is known as inscription. So that is why there is no need to discuss about the material, right? But yes, what are the things that could be discussed here, right? The basic categorization of the inscriptions have been done on the basis of two things, right? One is royal and private, right? But this is not necessary that we need to apply all everywhere the same kind of categorization. There was some other categorization that could be done on language, right? Date. Somebody was just now talking about geographical regions, right? Yes. Geographical region, right? Geographical region, right? So these are the different sort of categorization that could be done, right? And now, as far as this royal inscriptions are there, right? That could be also further categorized into many subcategories, such as okay, what else? क्या क्या हो सकता है, किस तरीके के कैटेगराइजेशंस कर सकते हैं? One one royal inscriptions might be related with land donations, right? So donative. One may be donative. Next. Informative, which is giving some information to the masses, right? One may be commemorative or for the memory. What is the spelling memory? MEMO. क्या लिखा है? अच्छा, sorry, sometimes I'm getting confused. memory, right? Commemorative, also we can write the commemorative, right? So basically what are these three categories? One is donative, so it is basically related to land donations, right? The second is informative, right? As here we can put the Ashokan inscriptions, right? I think you do have lots of examples for the land donative. We do find lots of inscriptions basically in South India during the Satavahanas, which are basically about the land donations, right? Whether the second is, as I told you, informative, which is basically some informations which were passed to either subject population or the bureaucrats, right? Again we can put the inscriptions of Ashoka in this category, right? And some were the memory, or we can say the commemorative inscriptions. So as commemorative inscriptions, basically just to remember some of the important incidents, such as, again we can quote some Ashokan inscriptions, such as Ashoka is visiting Lumbini, right? Or Ashoka is visiting Bodh Gaya. As you do know that Ashoka is putting inscriptions, right? And Ashoka is just writing certain information that okay, he has visited on his 10th renal year, he visited Bodh Gaya, right? And he is giving some tax benefits to the people, right? So yes, that inscriptions could be used for showing this, right? So these are the categories of the royal the royal inscriptions, right? And as you can understand, all these are carrying numbers of valuable informations, right? What kind of informations are there that we can discuss later? Now the second is the private, right? So as far as this private is concerned, so again it could be divided into certain parts, right? So in private, sometimes you'll find religious, right? So once any religious inscription is there, so again it is very much possible that this religious information is carrying information regarding that construction of that building, or any donations by the personal by the individual people. So any sort of religious, such as, I hope you remember this the inscription in Madhya Pradesh by Heliodorus, right? Heliodorus, nahi suna kabhi? Suna hai? Garud Stambh. Do you remember that? Right. So that Garud Stambh is basically carrying information regarding the religion, right? And apart from that, so some others are also there which are carrying the information regarding the right. Next is the inscriptions by the merchants. Inscriptions by the merchants. So now the merchant inscriptions could be also of many varieties, right? So as far as this merchant inscriptions are there, right? So merchant inscriptions are basically, do you remember any such inscription? Donative, right? Because the merchant community was also donating some land, right? Specifically to the religious communities. And merchant inscriptions related to guild. What else? Apart from guild, trade, guild, trade, right? So these are the information that we find from the merchant inscriptions, right? So somehow we can say at least these various types of inscriptions could be seen in India. And as there were so many sort of types of inscriptions were there, and that is what is happening. Somehow the inscriptions could be used multiply, right? Or the inscriptions could be used for the various information to write the history, right? So somehow, as you can understand that yes, these were having multiple of use, right? And that is why we need to analyze that what kind of informations that we could get for the for the society or the polity of that particular period, right? So now let us begin with polity, right? So now you just next heading you write down the informations from the inscriptions, from the inscription? First, the political informations. The political informations. Look, the first thing that the inscriptions tells us, or the inscriptions tell us, sorry, is about the right. No, polity we already discussed. So within polity, what kind of information that we are getting for the polity, right? Within polity, what kind of information that we are getting from the inscriptions. So the first thing which is very important, that is territorial expansion. Territorial expansion or the political control. Territorial expansion or the political control. I think there were so many examples we do have for this particular year, right? So if I'll talk about this territorial expansion, right? So there are a few things we need to know. You need to know that, look, if we find the Ashokan inscriptions in various areas, right? Like we'll find the Ashokan inscriptions even in Karnataka. It very simply, carries this idea that Ashoka was even ruling on Karnataka area, or that was under control of Ashoka. Kalinga, that as we do find that the Dholi and Jogad inscriptions, right, in Kalinga, and these inscriptions were directly carrying the idea or conveying the idea that definitely Kalinga was won by Ashoka, right. So yes, we do know about the political expansion or the territorial expansion of any particular dynasty or king, and somehow, as I told you, that this is fixing the territorial expansion or the territorial extent of any particular dynasty. At the same time, there were some other inscriptions, right, which are also very valuable to provide such kind of information, and there we can discuss about the Prayag inscriptions, right. So you just write down whether you have written the territorial expansion. So below that you just write down Ashokan inscriptions and the Prayag inscriptions by Samudragupta, and the Prayag inscription by Samudragupta. Right. I hope you must be knowing about that famous Samudragupta inscriptions, Allahabad inscriptions, right. So you just in bracket you write down Allahabad inscription. You should have written it. You have already written Prayag inscriptions, right. It's the same Prayag inscription, right. So what information has been given in this particular inscription? There is a list of 14 rulers, those who were defeated by Samudragupta, right, and there is a categorization of the rulers from North India, the rulers from the South India, and the coastal rulers, right. So basically, not coastal rulers, basically the tribal rulers, right. So there is a long list of the rulers, those who were defeated. So somehow it is telling us about the telling us about basically the territorial expansion. Okay, Samudragupta's excess or Samudragupta's dominance was there at least in these areas, right. So that is why we can say the in polity, the territorial expansion is one of the things which has always been carried, or which is always informed in the inscriptions, right. The next important information in polity that we find is about the genealogies. Genealogies. You understand the meaning of genealogy? What is the meaning of genealogy? No idea? Yes, ancestors basically, or the list of rulers in any particular dynasty, right. So sometimes they are giving, suppose there is a any other source, suppose we are referring the textual sources, and if we are referring the textual sources and we find okay, some important rulers were there and in between there is a gap, right. And if suppose we are referring the literary sources, and sometimes these kind of inscriptions are filling those gaps, right. Okay, such as there might be so many such cases where the inscriptions, we find the inscriptions basically in the Satavahanas, we'll find certain inscriptions, right. So yes, such kind of inscriptions are telling us about the genealogy, or it is completing the genealogy. They are not properly mentioning the genealogy like the Puranas, as we have discussed earlier also, that in Purana we do find a genealogy, but there you will find definitely they have given a sort of if any as such loophole is there, so these inscriptions are filling those kind of gaps, right? So yes, the genealogical informations were also there. What next? In polity? Administration. Right? In administration, sometimes we know about the bureaucracy, right? Such as in Ashokan inscriptions, right? You keep on writing the example, right? Because any as such information is, any as such question is coming, that must be handled with information, with the idea and certain examples, right? So, okay, bureaucracy, Ashokan inscriptions, then land revenue, right? What else? Land revenue, local level administration, such as Uttar Meru inscription of Cholas. Uttar Meru inscription of Cholas. Have you got any idea of the Uttar Meru inscription? सुना है कभी पहले? सुना है? कहाँ सुना है? कुछ स्पेसिफिकेशन पता है? Why this inscription is supposed to be very popular inscription? While dealing in some early classes, I just discussed about the local self-governments, right? Do you remember that? And I just told you in what way the nationalist historians hype, or they have just glorified such kind of cases. There is an inscription in Tamil Nadu near Madras, right, called as Uttar Meru inscription, and that inscription tells us about the local self-government in Chola state. Such as, we'll discuss definitely, because this is one of the favorite topics of the UPSC, right? And as it is supposed to be a favorite topic, so initially very frequently UPSC used to ask questions from this area. Nowadays I have seen that they have stopped asking their questions, because initially I think around 10 or 15 years back that idea was dominant also, and most of the people were accepting this was nonetheless example of local self-government, right? But later on historians have discarded it, and actually there were so many anti views, or so many opposite views have come up, and that is why I think they have stopped asking this question. But yes, definitely there was certain signs of local self-government, as they used to form a committee, and in every committee there used to be some members, right? And that committee was basically elected, right? Although the provision for the election was very different, and we can't compare with the modern day election, but even though it has been said that they were elected, right, and elected with a different way, some people were filling their nominations, and finally the out of them somebody was somebody has been chosen, right? And as this committee, as there was a committee, and that committee was divided into so many subcommittees, and every committee has been assigned a specific task, such as some committee was looking after the foreigners, right? As the South Indian states were always known for trade and commerce, because it's supposed to be a very good source of income for them, and that is where what happened, that yes, there was a committee. That committee had to look after the foreigners, those who were coming to their region. The second committee was in charge for the temple, right? The third committee was in charge for the irrigation facilities, right? So there was so many some subcommittees, and these committees were handling such kind of things. One committee was in charge of revenue collection, because it has been said that they were having this right to levy a tax, right, and to collect it as well for the local development. So somehow the panchayat is also doing the similar kind of things, right? Because as you do know that now panchayat has also been given a right to levy some taxes and to collect it, right? And with the help of that money, they could get some development projects, they could go for some development projects in the local areas, and that is why it has been supposed that this particular inscription was talking about the local self government. But there is some further explanation of this. We'll go we'll discuss that later. But yes, that inscription is supposed to be very important. So these kind of informations we definitely do get from the inscriptions, right? For the polity, right? But it is not only about the political informations, right? We do get some other informations as well from the the inscriptions, such as religious. Okay, that is next. Okay, fine. Let us discuss the religious. Religious. So, what kind of religious information that we do get, and what are the examples that we do have? What kind of religious information?
King follows which religions and
Okay, where you have written this land revenue, there you just write down land donations as well, because the land donation charters are giving information regarding the land donation land revenue. Land donation charters or the inscriptions were giving information to us regarding right. Okay, can be written, right? Can be written. You just write a point, just add a point. Sometimes international relationship, such as any idea? Such as there was few inscriptions in the South India, Ashokan inscriptions, and which are talking about their relationship with the South Indian state, extreme South states such as Chola, Chera, Pandya, and Kiralputra and Satyaputra, right? Some inscriptions are there which are dealing with the relation with some northwestern countries, right? So yes, we can write about that. Sorry. Well, that could be part of the merchant inscriptions. Right now we are just dealing with the royal inscriptions, right? Okay, fine. So the next is religious information. So as I told you that so many donations were basically given to the religion, right? And that is why sometimes it is quite easy to reconstruct the history of religion on the basis of inscriptions, right? So as we do find the first that so many inscriptions were there on the temple walls, the first thing, temple walls. Apart from that, we find the inscriptions regarding the land donation. And as we do know that initially the land donation was done to the religious communities. As we do know that about there was few terms such as Brahmadeyas, Agraharas, and Devdanas, right? So these are the terms. Basically, we come to know about such kind of terms through the inscriptions only, right? And these were the donations, as you can understand by the name only, that basically given to the religious communities, right? And that is why it denotes about the religious belief of the society, right? Religious belief of the society, religious belief of the society, and status of any religion, status of any religion. You just write a sentence here, somehow you'll miss it. Sometimes it has been interpreted from the inscriptions that the Buddhist people have still been donated lands in South India. Buddhist people has been donated lands in South India in early medieval period. In early medieval period, which shows the condition of Buddhism during in South India during early medieval period. Right? Next point you write down. First listen, then write, right? You must be knowing about so many religious movements during 6th century BC, right? Such as Buddhism, Jainism, and many others, right? Once we talk about many others, such as Ajivika was one of the popular sects. Do you know about any text of the Ajivika sect? For Buddhism, you do have numbers of texts, right? And so, to prove this thing, Buddhism was one of the dominant social movement during 6th century BC. You don't need anything, any as such inscription to prove. But do you know that from how come we prove that Ajivika was also a popular sect during that particular period? On the basis of inscriptions, right? Such as, you must be knowing about the caves which were given to the Ajivika sect or the followers of Ajivika sect by grandson of Ashoka, Dasarath, right? So that inscription tells us, right, that yes, Ajivika was also one of the popular sects, right? So yes, that is also another information. You just write down. The existence of certain sects such as Ajivika, Yaksha, and Naga what you have written, the information, the existence of okay, has been proved only by few inscriptions such as the Barabara caves inscription, Barabara caves in Gaya. Normally these sects and cults did not have any scriptures. right? So, okay, these are some religious information that we do get through I mean to say inscriptions, right? Now, the next thing, the social information or information regarding society. Information regarding society. Basically, in the land donation inscriptions, right? Land donations inscriptions which were done by some private people or some individual, right, gives us some idea regarding the society, right? Such as, let me tell you, because you might have seen such kind of modern instances. I am just giving you a modern instance. Suppose in temples you'll find a list of people, those who have donated amount for the construction of the temple. Okay. X this much rupees, Y this much rupees. And do you know one thing, that there is a hierarchy? The person who has given maximum money, the person who has given highest amount, right, definitely he will be mentioned first, and then it is followed, the same tradition is followed, right? So you find it very easy, okay, that's a normal thing, but no, it was not easy, at least in historical context. Why it was not easy? Because somehow it was defining the status of that particular community, right? If somebody from a particular community has given, and that time basically it was not caste, sorry, it was not individual, it was always community, right? So if any community was giving some huge amount of money to the temple or any other shrine, right, so that community has always been considered a a developed community, right? Or we can say we always could consider them, right, that they were belonging to some upper varna, right? And in fact it was deciding the varna structure, and sometimes it manipulated also the varna structure. I think it is it is quite confusing for you. Let me simplify it, right? Look, there is a term mobility, right? And in fact there is a term called social mobility. Have you got any idea regarding this social mobility? What exactly is a social mobility? Have you ever heard this term? Acha, have you ever heard the term Sanskritization? Another Varna. It means that it was very much allowed in Indian society, right? It was always allowed in Indian society that you can move from one Varna to another Varna, or you could upgrade yourself in the Varna order. Now, if you are feeling confused, let me give you some example. Chandragupta Maurya was not a Kshatriya, no, but somehow he upgraded himself in the Varna order, he became Kshatriya. Were the Guptas Kshatriya? No. Satavahanas Kshatriya? No. Right. Sungas Kshatriya? No. Kusanas Kshatriya? No. In fact, no ruler in India were from the Kshatriya Varna, not a single ruler, right? But somehow they are always known in history as Kshatriya rulers, right? So basically what happened, they have been upgraded in the social order. So the same is true for the Rajput rulers, right? Rajputas were basically coming from the peasant community, but they have been upgraded in the social order, right? So this, why actually I am giving you all this example? Okay, fine, it is not always true for the royal community. It was very much true even for the normal human being to upgrade themselves in the social order, such as Kayasth community you might have heard, right? Kayasth community. How many of you are from eastern region of India? Eastern region से आप लोग हैं. आप लोग कायस्थ नहीं सुना कभी? कायस्थ community. Sorry. You are from? As I am asking you. You might have heard about this community. अच्छा, अमिताभ बच्चन के बारे में तो सुना है ना, लाला जिसको आप कहते हैं, ठीक है. कायस्थ, इट इज नॉट द लाला लाइक बनिया, लाइक जीवन तो पता है ना, जीवन नहीं पता है. यू नेवर वॉच हिंदी मूवीज, द ओल्ड हिंदी मूवीज, द क्लासिकल मूवीज. In always there's a in the old movies which basically about the rural culture, you'll find a munim. no, not Munim, sorry. He'll find a person called, moneylender, right? And that role is mostly being played by Jeevan, right? If you'll see Mother India also you'll find him, right? So that, anyways, that's not our concern, right? So basically it has been supposed that they are coming from this community, that is why just, in fact Amitabh Bachchan is also coming from the same community, right? So the Kayas were basically belonging in the lower Varna, they were belonging to the lower Varna, right? And in fact, in history what happened, somehow they upgraded themselves in the social order. How come? Because somehow they learned the writing works, right? And once basically the early medieval rulers are coming, and then the Mughal Muslim rulers are coming, then what happened, then basically these people have, as they started doing this work, right, in the code, and that is where they got a proper status in the society, right? And the second thing, somehow they made some good money also, and once they made some money, so this donations to the temple somehow became one of the important factor or important, sort of, what should I say, important mean to upgrade themselves in the social order, right? Because just tell me one thing, if you are donating more money to the temple, in that case definitely your name would reflect here, right? And gradually the society would treat you, gradually the society will start treating you properly, right? And gradually what is happening as a result of that, over the time, I am not saying it is happening just in 10 years or 20 years, over the time the whole community has been upgraded in the upper Varna. So it is one example, you do have numbers of examples, and that's the reason that M.N. Srinivas was forced to write the article known as Sanskritization, right? So he basically talks about in what way you could upgrade yourself in the social order during the colonial period. So it was the article of M.N. Srinivas which talks about Sanskritization, it is talking about the colonial period, right? But it is, this particular phenomena was true throughout the history. So from where we try to gather such kind of information, definitely from such kind of sources, right? So yes, the inscriptions tell us about the Varna system, right? The inscriptions tell us about the social mobility, right? So these are the information that we do get from the inscriptions, right? So you just write a single sentence, that is more than sufficient. That the inscriptions very frequently tell us about many social systems and values, such as the Varna order, social mobility, their relations with the environment, Basically such informations come from the temple inscriptions. Right? Next you write down cultural information. Some inscriptions give us information regarding many cultural practices such as dance, music, etc. In Tamil Nadu, many inscriptions do mention about various forms of dances and Natya Shastra, such as the Nataraj temple inscription. Nataraj temple inscriptions. Nataraj temple inscriptions, right? One more point, you have written society. Just write a single, word: agrarian relation. Agrarian relation in society. Do you understand the meaning of agrarian relation? That agrarian relation kept on changing, right? And in fact, it differed time to time, right? So how, sometimes we do know about the agrarian relation on the basis of these, inscriptions, such as, let me tell you one thing. If Jamindar is there, right, or if any official bureaucrat is there who is supposed to collect the land revenue, so he is sharing a different kind of relationship with the agriculturist people, right, or basically those who are farming the land, right. Whether if the land is donated to some Brahmin fellow, it means that the agrarian relationship is getting changed, because the Jamindar the Brahmin fellow is not involved in the land in the same fashion as the Jamindar used to be. And because of what, and that is why sometimes it has been interpreted in a way, ki if the land has been donated to a Brahmin, right, in that case the exploitation of the peasants was increased actually, right. So sometimes we do find information regarding the agrarian relation also, right. Okay, so now last, the economic informations. The economic informations. So basically, it is about the merchant inscriptions. It is about the merchant inscriptions, right? So the merchants were basically issuing, they were also issuing some, or they were also, writing some inscriptions, and those inscriptions are giving information regarding trade and commerce, right? The guild, right? The issuing of coins, right? So many different informations are there in those kind of merchant scholars, and in fact they have been, sometimes they have given some, very good information regarding the guilds, such as if we'll talk about the Mandsaur inscription, right? So that inscription is telling us about the change which is taking place, such as one guild is moving from one place to another place, and in fact in that particular Mandsaur inscriptions they have discussed it, in what way the administration is not facilitating them in the area from in Gujarat, and because of what they were dealing with the oil, right? And because of the attitude of the government, they had to shift from that place to another place. So these kind of economic information that we also do get from the inscriptions. So yes, it's so many valuable informations regarding the economy has also been discussed, right? That Mandsaur is definitely the most valuable, or we can say important inscription in this particular regard. So these are the information that we do get from the inscriptions, right? So that's about inscription now, right? But at the same time, when you are trying to end your answer, right, you need to write about certain limitations also, right? Write limitations of the inscriptions. Limitations. Limitations. Right? What do you think? What kind of limitations we can talk about? The first and the most important limitations that this inscription itself is a source of history sometimes which misguides us. How come, right? Most of the time we'll find that the inscriptions were misplaced or sifted from one place to another place, right? And of course, once it has been sifted from one place to another place, we don't know about that, right? So, and sometimes it is misguiding us also, right? So that is the biggest limitation. It is misplaced or shifted from one place to another place, shifted from one place to another place, right? Next, I think it's easy to understand, right? Next, exaggeration. Exaggeration. It is again very simple to understand, right? Of course, what Samudragupta is writing, it is quite hard to believe, right? That he defeated all the rulers, they all started paying tribute to him, right? But somehow if it is written, we have to trust on this, right? But we can put some questions on that, right? That's a different thing, right? But yes, most of the time you'll find that these are exaggerations, right? Such as we can talk about certain inscriptions, and somehow just by seeing those inscriptions, it seems very tough that who exactly was ruling on that area. Such as one Chalukya ruler is writing that actually the Karnataka was being ruled by him, but at the same time the Gupta ruler is writing that he won the Karnataka area, right? So somehow these kind of confusions were very popularly seen in the inscriptions, right? And that is why it sometimes it confuses us, right? It confuses us to write the history. That is the second limitation. Third, many inscriptions are kept in museum and not published yet. I think easy. Normally these are stored in museum, right? And until and unless they are opening it, they are opening it to the research scholars. Definitely, the level of the level of the research won't be improved, right? So that's the another problem. Next, not talking about the subaltern sections of society. Not talking about the subaltern sections of society. I think also it is easy to understand. Whenever we talk about the inscriptions, definitely it must be funded by some elite section of society, right? And that is why it hardly bothered to mention about the subaltern people such as women and the lower peasant basically. So we don't find any as such a reference except very few, such as the land donations. That's the only exceptional inscription that we do have. And on the basis of that, definitely we reconstruct the history regarding agrarian structure and all. So that is why this is another problematic thing, right? Next, sometimes dating the inscription is a dating the inscriptions is a problematic area. Well, in most of the inscriptions, you'll find that they have mentioned date, right? And sometimes they are mentioning the date in both the formats, like numerical formats and the they are writing in words, right? So, but sometimes you'll find that they have definitely given the date, right? But what they are doing, they are writing in symbolic figures, right? Sometimes the date has been written on the inscriptions, like they have made the hands and some other things, and just by putting that they were trying to convey the idea of date, and of course it is very tough to decipher such kind of things, so it's also creating problem. That's all about this, archaeology, and I hope any such question is coming regarding archaeology, you can handle it, right? Because we did discuss about everything. We did discuss about the history of I mean to say, sorry. Yeah, exactly. I was coming to that point only, right? So the first thing, we do have information regarding the history of inscriptions. We do know about the history of language, right, or the scripts in inscriptions, right? And the third thing, definitely the types of inscriptions, and the fourth thing, the positive and negative sides of inscriptions. Any as such question is coming, right? So you need to discuss, I mean, definitely as per the requirement of the question, you can, this is the content that you have to deal with, right? The next thing, sometimes the questions are coming, right, in a very vague way. Like they are just asking you to write about the inscriptions. Whenever you are writing an answer which is having larger content, right, always try to write the answer in a structured format. And what is the structure? The structure which I followed while dictating you, right? Like, instead of writing numbers of things, or instead of writing, somebody writing political information, somebody writing social, somebody writing religious, except that it is better to make a structure. Okay, this is the, political information that could be again subcategorized into, these categories, and then some other such as, the religious information, the social information, right, the cultural information, the economic information, right. So somehow these terms are only sufficient to carry the idea that you have a very fair understanding of, that inscriptions, right, and yes, that would be more than sufficient for you, right. So sometimes the structures must be followed in a careful way, and that is going to, convey the idea of your information, right, and this is sufficient, right. So I think that's all for the inscriptions. Right. So next is coins. Coins. There are two systems for exchange. One is known as barter system, and second is of course coins, right. So there are two modes of exchanges, and throughout the history you will find that exchanges are always part of society, right. So you can't avoid this, right, and you have to discuss about this, both the systems, barter and the coins, right. So there are a few things that we need to understand. Normally the coins are used in the urban economy, right. And why the coins are required in the urban economy? There is a very simple logic of that, right. And what is the logic? If we'll talk about, the rural culture, so there the relationship has been controlled by kinship relationship, right, or the exchanges also have been controlled by the kinship relationship, right. So what exactly is this kinship relationship? Have you got any idea? There is a basically, right. So it's a sort of, maybe there may be a blood relationship, and normally I hope you must be knowing about that. Okay, the people, those who are living in a single area, right, in a rural area, right, normally they are related to each other, right, and that is why what is happening, there was a kinship relationship, right, and somehow the kinship relationship could control the exchanges. Like suppose I am the person cultivating rice and he is the person cultivating wheat. We live in same village, right. So when I am cultivating rice, right, I'll definitely after the harvest I'll give him some, rice, and once he cultivates his wheat after the harvest season, he'll return it to me in form of wheat, right. So this is the exchange, but there is a gap of 6 or 7 months, or we can say 1 year in between these two, or 6 months we can say, right. So okay, somehow I can wait for 6 months to get my money or get my stuff back, right. So this is possible, but do you think that this is going to work in the urban areas? Because in urban areas you always know about the exchanges which are basically taking place between two remote or two areas which is physically there's much distant, distance, sorry, physically much distance, right? So as there's a much physical distance, right? So you can't control the exchanges without the help of the coins, right? Because yes, if somebody is coming from Mesopotamia to India, right, to buy something, so definitely he had to pay in return of that. Immediately after that, definitely he could not pay it after 1 year or after 2 years, right? And that is why in the urban areas you find that the money or the coins were very much required, and that is why the history of coin also begins with the urbanization. But yes, there is definitely a curiosity among the historians, then how come it is possible during the IVC period that we haven't received coins, right? So yes, that's a problematic area, that's a question. I don't have any answer for that also, right? But it is now so far until so far as we don't know about any sort of system related to coin under this IVC or during this IVC period, and that is why we don't have any other option except this to say that yes, they were using the barter system for the exchanges. How come it was possible? As I am telling you, I don't have any answer for that, and normally historians have generalized it that they must be using barter system. But yes, definitely it must be very problematic, and in fact I think there were seals and some other things were there. So I think there might be some use of seals. In what way they would have been using seals, I don't know, but there must be some use of seal, right? But yes, once we come to the second urbanization, once we come to the second urbanization, and as you know, it is marking the beginning of coins, right? So basically, let us see the history of coins once, and then we'll move to the next section. The coins, the earliest coin that could be seen in India, that was known as, in IVC we find seals. But that you do know that seals were not having any use they were not used as coins, right? So we cannot say something. These are certain terms that we find during the Vedic period. Nisk, Satman, Pad, Karsapan. There were some more terms, right? These have been used in a way that these were coins, right? But again, I will say the same thing, until and unless it is required, right? Definitely people won't be using the coins, right? Because during this Vedic period, as we do know that the society did not have any sort of surplus, and they were not even practicing agriculture, right? Initially in the Vedic period, early Vedic period, it was a sort of pastoralist economy, and of course they did not need the coins. But may be possible that for few exchanges it has been said that these were nothing but sort of jewelleries, right? And these jewelleries were sometimes used by them for the exchanges. That's the interpretation which has been given for these words, but definitely these were not coins. So the earliest coins known as punch marked coins, right? And that was used on 6th century BC, punch marked coins. Why do we call it punch marked? And these were the silver coins. Why do we call it punch marked? Because they used to put a stamp over the coin, right? And basically in the stamp we'll find the figures of fish, moon, sun, hill, right? These kind of figures could be seen on the such kind of coins, right? So that is known as punch marked coins. But mind you, when they were making the punch marked coins, they haven't started using the it was not depicting about their advanced metallurgy, because they were not making the coins just by heating the coins. They were not trying to melt the stuff, right? And then they were trying to put it in a frame, and after that they were trying to make the coins. No, it was not happening. Simply they used to cut the metals, right? And just by cutting it, they were trying to get the coins. But sometimes what is happening, the coins will find that the punch marked coins were normally it has been supposed that these were in a rectangular shape, right? But sometimes you'll find that these are in very awkward shapes. Reason very simple. They have to get a proper weight, right? And until they are getting the weight, what they kept on doing. Suppose they have just given this shape, right? And the weight is heavy. Then they cut it from this side, right? then again the rate is heavy, they again cut it from this side, and that is why most of the times you'll find that the punch mark coins were not in a proper shape, right? So they did not have a very advanced system of making the coins, and that is why these coins I will find in a very proto stage, right? And the next stage of the coins are coming with Indo-Greeks, right? Why the Indo-Greeks are known in history? They are basically known for the coins, right? And in fact, their history has been constructed on the basis of coins only, right? So Indo-Greeks basically introduced some new sort of coins in India, right? Such as double die struck coins, right? They started putting the mark or stamp on both the sides, right? Apart from that, they are known for putting some informations also on the coins, right? So this is the next thing which is very important, and somehow this legacy was carried by specifically by Sakas and Kusanas. Now they have started minting the coins like the Roman coins, right? And Roman coins used to be very specific, as it used to carry numbers of valuable information. The first thing, they have a proper metallurgical technique to make the coins. Now they have started melting the metal and they started giving it a proper shape, right? So normally they will find that during this particular period, the circular the size was circular, right? An exact circular. And of course, there were so many valuable informations, and definitely because of that, it became so popular. And as you know, that the Kusanas were basically known for issuing numbers of gold coins, right? So now it is not only about the silver coins, some bronze coins, some copper coins, gold coins. These are also being issued, right? And somehow it also reflects the label of economy, because as you do know, this period is known for the apex of the second urbanization, because now India got connected with the western side. Silk route is also being used, and because of what we can talk about numbers of trade relationship with the western countries, and they needed some advanced system of coins, and that is we'll find that the coins have different values, right? And that's the important thing. And after that, as you do know, that the next important thing that we discuss about the Satavahanas, or stage that we can discuss, is about the Satavahanas. You do know that Satavahanas are also known for their trading relationship, and in fact they had very flourished trade with the west, that too through the sea route, right? And that is why in their coins you will find that sometimes the ships have also been made, right, or printed. And apart from that, they were also known for issuing some low value currencies such as lead and protein, right? So these are some low value currency, and mind you, the low value currency always reflects the better status of economy. That yes, that economy, it is such a economy where everybody using coin. In fact, the lower class people have also started using the coins. That's the significance of the lower value currencies, right? And finally, the next stage is coming with the Guptas, right? And Gupta, as you do know, they are known for the gold coins, right? Sorry, ये तो आ नहीं रहा होगा इधर, नहीं आ रहा है. Gupta, right? So the Guptas are basically known for issuing maximum number of gold coins, right? And in fact, after the Gupta period, normally we find a sort of decline in the currency system in India, right? And in fact, there were so many reasons on the basis of what we claim such kind of thing. So basically, the first thing which is very important, that initially just by seeing the gold coins, it has been interpreted in a way that that is the most prosperous phase of Indian history, right? But later on, as I told you, that it was wrongly interpreted, because the gold currency always shows that the money was not circulated, rather the money was concentrated to a particular class or community. And in fact, now you can connect it with the feudalism, right? Because if it is always about the gold currency, right, or the gold coins, it means that it is not very very fluently or frequently being used in market. It has been, it must be used for storing the currency rather than for circulating it in the market. Because if I hope you remember the demonetization, right? After the demonetization, the government has issued the 2000 rupee note, right? पहले आप जब 1000 का नोट लेके जाते थे तो खुला हो जाता था, चेंज हो जाता था, right? It was quite easy to get the change of 1000. But after the demonetization, as the government has issued 2000 rupees note and they did not issue the 500 rupees note, right? And that is why people were never ready or getting ready to give you the change, because 2000 rupee meant, right, that the 20 notes of 100 rupees, right? And of course nobody was actually everybody was going through a crisis, right? And nobody was willing to give you. I think that idea could be applied here also. If you are having always the gold currency, it is very common, right, that it was not being very frequently being used in the market, and that is why it has got a negative interpretation now, and it shows the declining economy. But apart from this, some other things are also there, such as debasement, right? So debasement, by debasement what exactly I mean, such as if you are talking about the gold currency, so in the gold currency they started mixing some copper, right? So it shows the debasement, right? So it shows the weakening economy. But later on again it has been interpreted in a different way, and in fact there was a historian called Lovell, right? So he is writing in a way it is not about the declining. Basically now India has started struggling for the gold, and as they were not getting the gold, and that is where they started adding some other stuff in the year. But again this is not the right interpretation or justification of the fact. So yes, there is a decline. And as you can understand, in the post-Gupta period, definitely you will find that the less use of currency. But again, some of the historians are trying to justify it, there was no as such dearth, and in fact there was so much new things which were being used in India, such as kaudi and all. Kaudi, you understand? Cells. Cells, okay. So now they have started using cells in form of currency, right, for the low value currency. So they are giving the example of that, okay, these kind of things are also happening. But even though there is a debate which is going on, and somehow we'll do it in early medieval India, right, what kind of debate is there regarding the economy or regarding the urban decay and all, right, that will do there. But somehow that's a brief history of the coins, and again it got revived only after the 11th century, right. Once the third urbanization is coming into India, and then it got revived, and after that revival, definitely we find some new currency coming into India, such as Tanka, Jeetal, Dam, right, and some other things, right, Rupaya as well, right. So now that's a brief history of the coins. But in tomorrow's class we'll do that in what way we can use currency, the coins to construct the history, right. So that we are going to do in tomorrow's class, and tomorrow will begin definitely the literary sources as well. Any question is there, query is there, you can ask to me. You just joined. Okay, so you must be, you definitely must be, you must have got the video lectures for last few classes. You have joined it? Acha, it was a demo. So if you are joining it, in that case, you just take the video classes, because the first few classes were very important, right? Without that, you won't be able to understand the way we are going to discuss, right? So just see those classes as well simultaneously, right? And please, for those people, those who still those who haven't sent me the message, right, please join the WhatsApp group. You can ask me the questions to the group only, right? I have joined. Those who have sent me message, I have included them in the group. But only the class people have sent me. Very less number of people from the online they have, and there's a very good number of people, but somehow I haven't received any such message from their side, right? Okay.